Hi. Hi, everyone. First of all, I want to thank you for inviting me to this conversation. I'm really thrilled to be having this debate with all those brilliant women. Um, I'm Danièle Obono. I'm a member of the French Parliament from La France Insoumise movement. And if I have to present myself, I would say, just as the previous two speakers said, it's both personal and political for me, for us, for many women and women of color when it comes to such matters. I am a first generation migrant in France. Since I arrived, I was born in Gabon, a Central African country. I was raised there, and I grew up there. And Gabon is a former French colony. So growing up, I knew about colonialism in the daily and quite usual way you know about it when you grow up in Africa, seeing like you're living in a majority Black country, so, and with a lot of a very rich cultural heritage and families and ties and everything. And yet, especially in former French colonies, there's the French presence in many ways, in the best schools that you can attend if you have enough money. That are French in the big companies that own the oil fields that is the main resource of this country. So this is not something that is very striking at first, but it's really something, even being young and a child, you feel it. You feel post-colonial, living in a post-colonial society. So moving in France and arriving in France and now being proper French citizen made me also change, and being part of the diaspora now made me realize, like, now I'm on the other side. I'm a French citizen, I'm a French MP, and I bear with me my ancestors' legacy, my family legacy, my heritage, African heritage, but also the responsibility of being a Westerner, an Afro-Westerner, and being in a position of power, of visibility. And so it's all both personal and political, and especially when we talk about the academia. I used to work in the academia. I've been a PhD student for some years, long years. I was at the same time very active in politics. So I haven't finished my PhD since I got elected, actually. But at the same time, I really experienced the way French academia has been blind to those issues, those subjects. It feels sometimes as a scholar, or even as an activist, or even as a citizen, it feels like French kind of escaped the past 50 years of studies and intellectual debate about decolonial studies or post-colonial studies, and being very ethnocentric and French-centric. And it feels like everything when we talk about race and colonial history is like, Anglo-Saxon and US. So there's this constant fight you have to engage in when you are interested in learning, educating yourself first. You have to do it by yourself to learn about those issues, and then to push it in the public debates is also a constant fight. So that's where I come from on those issues, and I'm very interested to share with you the experience of being confronted to that in a moment, as some of us said, which is very exciting, with mass movement pushing forward this issue in the public debate. So I think the first question we might ask ourselves, and people watching might ask themselves, is what's the point of decolonizing the academia? And to me, it's a starting point, because obviously it's not for academia itself, not just for us wanting to educate ourselves and to learn more. To me, it's about changing the world. It's about how do we emancipate ourselves individually and collectively. That's the reason why I'm a member of the parliament today. That's the reason why I've been involved in activism over the past now 20 years. And I got into politics in the noble sense of it, to change the world. And to me, it's only possible if the people individually and collectively are able to take back the power that they have been stolen from them as people, as political subject, and to help that this process of auto-emancipation is also made easier, because we know what we want, we know why we want it, and we know where we come from and how long it's been, for generations, and from all over the world, people fighting back to liberate themselves. And to me, that's what this is about. History and the academia is the place where you can learn, and you should, and that's what education is about. I think it's Hannah said, education is power. It is power. It's a battlefield. It's written, and depending on who wins those battles, you will have different history. You will have history from above or from below, and most of the time, it's history from above. The winners of history are writing it, and to me, the issue and the challenge is to fight back and take back the writing of our own history, of this history of people fighting back and liberating themselves, and learning about those experiences of revolutions, of all sorts of revolution, where people actually kind of begin to grasp how powerful they can be, and all the amazing experience, also the very dreadful experience and harrowing experience of confronting power and being repressed, but also the emancipation process. To me, that's what it's about. Why is it so important to do that, and to engage in that process, both within the academia and outside the academia? Because this is a fight in society as at large, to me, to have. It's very timely, the conversation we have tonight, because last night there was a very well made, very interesting documentary series that was broadcast on the main national channel in France. It's called France Télévisions, and the title of that documentary was Decolonizations, and it was, and there've been a lot of talk on the social media about that film, because I think that's the first time in decades, in forever, that such a piece of journalism and history was broadcast on a prime time slot in French television. And it's interesting because it refers to what Lucienne showed at the beginning of her speech about the fall of the French Empire. If you remember that map, when you take the rest of the white spaces, especially in Africa, the rest of them which was not under British rule, was under French rule. That was the second biggest empire, and this is the first time I think people reacted on the social media, saying like, I'm like 40 or 50 years old, I've never heard about that. I'm discovering this, and it's like an enlightening moment to me. So I don't know if for French speaking and French knowing people. I really, I will advise you to go on the France Télévisions website, because it's on replay, and it's a very, even when you know, because you've learned and you went to learn, as I said, fighting inside the academia to learn about your own history, even when you know things, facts that have been told, it's very powerful to see live footages of it at the time, and it's very well documented and well made a film. So I really recommend you to go and see that. And to me, it's very striking, and the fact that it is happening in France today, as I said at the beginning, that I'm talking from the perspective of an African-born women, French women, now an Afro-French, part of the African diaspora, growing up under a post-colonial country, African country, and now being part of one of the middle power, because it's not an empire anymore. It hasn't been for a long time, but it's like a middle power, or it's a power that feels itself as still some kind of big power. So I'm on the other side now, and I'm a westernized woman, and I'm in a position of power, and being such means also, as I said, an activist, political activist, and a revolutionary. And that's where I'm looking at, is how do we fight back, as I said, both in the academia and in politics at large, in daily life, and in position of power. I'm a member of the French Parliament, and on a committee dealing with issue of justice, police. So this is not a debate about Black Lives Matter or such police brutality, but it's been a lot of the current conversations finally happening in France have been about racial justice, demands for racial justice, and also demands to rewrite history in a sense that adds other voices. And it's a very political task, because it also depends on how many money we put on the table for researcher, people who've been toiling in the academia alone, small numbers of PhD students, or very few people fighting back against the statu quo in the academia that have been doing that for decades and that weren't known, and now are having the opportunity to speak about their work. And it's very important, but the power to do that rely on the government and the money we put in education, in higher education, and that's also the responsibility of the elected officials to push for more money in the academia and in funding those researchers. So I think the impetus to that and what is fueling that and what can help us are the mass movement that have been happening, and that's also what keeps the fight going, because if you keep yourself just within the academia, I think it would be very difficult to push those issues because academia is also a battlefield of power, a hierarchy with all, the intersection of everything that we know about oppression and domination, economic, social, cultural, gender-related, racially related. So I think, and it's also true for other social fields. I think what's fueling and can fuel our fight for justice and historical justice in a way, our mass movement. And what's very inspiring, has been inspiring, especially in France, is the way the impetus from the Black Lives Matter movement have helped put the conversation, as I said, on the table. I want to talk about also just a quick example. Over the past month, what has been happening is that they've been for decades, I would say forever, if we trace back the history of the anti-racist movements and racial justice movement in France. But there've been movement from asking for fighting against police brutality in France for decades, and what happened with the death of George Floyd and all the demonstration happening all over the world is that it really gave a new sense to those movements, and that was also prompted conversation about French own history of racial violence, of police brutality, of racism within the institution like police, and also about slavery in France, which is a major taboo, and especially when you think about France, it's not a world empire anymore, but it still has the legacy of that in the French West Indies, which used to be, which actually it's a situation very interesting, because those territories have been part of France for way before some continental parts of France, like those parts which belong to Italy or a place like that. So they've been French before, some regular French that you would think they're French, but they've always been, cast aside because it's far away, and it's, those are Black people, former slave descendants, and you got this systemic discrimination against the French West Indies and the outer sea territories. And what has been happening over there, I think those were the first movement to remove statues in the movement. I think it was even before maybe Bristol, because in Pointe-à-Pitre there've been a movement, and what they did is they targeted the statue of one of actually a white French abolitionist, and they were saying by targeting this guy, saying that we need to also question a version of history that showed like slavery was ended by good-willing white people, and those the people who built this movement are quite young activists, quite radical, and so it puts this conversation on the table, and it was very, very refreshing and welcomed. And you had also those movement against Colbert, who was a big minister at the time in the I would say 16th century or 17th century in France, and who is the guy who wrote the Black Code, which is where they regulated slavery and they legalize slavery and how masters should treat their slaves. And you had this conversation happening and movement pushing and young people pushing that issue that was very important. And so those are the example. I'm going to end on that, showing how the dynamics of mass movements and especially spirited by young people, and we've seen those demonstrations and other anti-racist activists for decades in France. It was so liberating to be part of those movements in June, last June in France, when you had thousands of young French people of all color showing up after being called for by the Collective Adama, Justice for Adama, which is one of the Black young guys who've been killed by the police in 2016. It's been 4 years now, and the family is asking for justice. And we showed up, and there was all those young people, very disciplined, very clear in their demand. And I think, to me, that's a reason to keep the fight going. And I think we should really help wherever we are within the academia or in position of power, elected officials, really take our inspiration from there and fight back to reclaim and regain our history, sense of ourselves, knowing where we come from all over the world, wherever we are, and knowing where we want to go. It's to write our own history of liberation and emancipation. And I think that's a wonderful time to do that at the moment, and to have this internationalism happening right now.
But I'm just going to go back to some of the stuff that you were talking about at the beginning, and the personal impacts of colonialized thinking, colonial attitudes. And I want to go to you, Danielle, because you've had an horrendous experience very recently in Paris, in France, where a right-wing magazine has depicted you in a horrendous racist fashion, actually as a slave. And if you don't mind, I'd just like you, I know how you responded because I saw the tweet. You said it was hurtful, it was cruel and idiotic. I wonder how, I wonder if this is part of the backlash to Black Lives Matter, but also what was the public response to that? Did you feel supported in your anger, really, in your rightful anger?
Yeah, I think first of all, the public nationally and internationally response was incredible. I really felt it deeply because I've been elected for 3 years now. It's my first mandate. I've never been elected before, so it was a brand new experience. And from the very beginning, I faced racist and sexist attacks. And I think I'm not the only one. I'm not the first one. Before me, former Minister of Justice Christian Taubira was a target of the very same people. And right now in France, you have journalists and activists and actors of color, the very few of us being a public figure that are constantly targeted by cyber harassment and such shows. But I think it was this time it felt like those people really went too far. That was the last drop that pushed it too far. And especially because of that picture and the story around it, it's interesting because we're talking about history and academia, because those people felt like they felt at ease to do that because they've been enabled. We have a toxic culture, although that's why I insisted it. The fight is within the academia, but it's a fight in society at large. There's been this toxic, incenting culture that has been nurtured in the media and in politics. And I think Anna, being an elected official, must have also felt the kind of attacks that I'm talking about. And I think about Diane Abbott, for instance, who's been a prime target also in the UK. But I think to me, it's also the enablers, the people who let it happen, that are also should be put on trial. And I think that this was very specific because the whole article was about teaching me an history lesson. Actually, they portrayed me as an enslaved African woman, kind of like the big obsession of those far right people, racist and xenophobic people, is to send us back. It echoes also what the like of Donald Trump say to women like Ilhan Omar, send her back. And it's like this fantasy about sending us back, us, black and brown, that they feel like don't belong to the vision of Europe, of European country or Western country, even though, as I said, we've been there forever and all over the place, all over the world, not just in Africa. Well, but so I think that they wanted to teach us a lesson and tell them and teaching me about the Arabian slave trade, and so this was a mess of racist. And I actually filed a complaint at the for justice, and I hopefully will have a trial, because I think it was not just me being targeted, but it was a message to the people who look like me or who recognize themselves in my work and what I represent. So, and also as a public official and elected person, it was also an attack on the Republic as a whole, because I represent the people, and so it was important to fight back. And I also, what helped to fight back was also the support, the tremendous support I received when I tweeted this, and also from people even from opposition party that we usually oppose, and like some right wing. I even had a call from the president, which was like, what? But and I think the reaction showed also because of the context. And as I said, there've been those anti-racist movement, and when you talk about slavery being such a touchy subject, and it really touched something very sensitive in all of us. Obviously, me personally, but Black people in France, whether they're African from the West Indies, from all over the world, and French people also, because it questioned what Frenchness is about. And so I think it was the fight back. There's this, you said, this backlash happening against movement asking for racial justice, but the fight back is also very important, and that's what I.
Okay, thank you, and thanks for the correction, Danielle. The French West Indies, where there is the campaign. What's your view? Statues, do we pull them down? Do we put up a plaque to explain what they're about? What's your thoughts?
Well, first of all, I want to say that it's not new. It's nothing new. Actually, removing statues has been like, we've been doing that forever, not just about, when it comes to slave owners, but that's what history is about. We rewrite it. We rewrite street names, because it's, as I say, a battlefield, and it's about who decides who is writing, who do we celebrate. I think the issue is like the cities, who do the city belong to, and are we ourselves, are we all at home in the cities and the public space, and who does the public space belong to? Is if it belongs to everyone, well, it should reflect it in the people we celebrate, because that's what putting statue is about, celebrating somebody for what they did. And I think I think the conversation is valid, and that's why the concern of the people, as Hannah said, it's like it was important for some people to realize what it means living in a world, in a society where you don't see yourself nowhere, but you see a symbol of your oppression every day, as a women, as a people of color, as women. It's like, yeah. So I think the actions are legitimate and valid, and it says that they are pushing the conversation happening. And I think it's so, and it has to be also so make it normal. As I said at the beginning, that's what we've been doing. That's what history is about. So it's nothing new. It's nothing special. It's not just for the Black people or for, the women. It's what we've been doing. The problem is that the one who have been doing that have been mostly privileged, dominant people. And so they've been reflecting their situation of power in the streets. So that's what I would say. And to me, just a short story about that issue. I talk about Colbert, who was like this 17th century big prime minister. It's not prime minister, but it's the equivalent. And he actually had the statue in front of the National Assembly. And there have been activists who defaced it. They put a tag on it saying like it pushed a conversation. And that we realized that inside the National Assembly, which is a palace, royal palace, which is kind of at odds with being a republic, but there's no celebration of, the Black Jacobins. There's nothing about, all those statues of royal figures, slave owners, but nothing about the people who actually made the revolution, the first one, Toussaint Louverture or people like that. And you realize that this is what the National Assembly is, the home of the people, people's place. It's supposed to reflect that. So that pushed a conversation, and I think that's a very good thing. I think to shake the consensus, like the dominant consensus on this.
What text would you recommend for teenagers to read? So any recommendations for people with teenagers what should they be reading in the vein of this topic? Not just anything. Anyone?
I'm a fan of Mallory Blackman. So, you know, Noughts and Crosses, you know, really good retelling of Shakespearean sort of idea, but which explains the dynamics of racism and colonialism. So, you know, there's so many. I mean, Laurie Halse Anderson wrote some really good books around slavery and the American South. So, yeah, this off the top of my head.
Lovely, thank you. Anyone else? I'll go next then. Yeah, Decolonisation has just released a short version of Black and British, and it's just out this month, and it's aimed from around age 12, I think. And I had a little look. I ordered a copy. It looks fantastic, and I'd always recommend Decolonisation and now to children as well. On that note, I think we do need to wind up. I didn't even get on to go on, Anna. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say that. I mean, just 2 points to make. I really think that people should read Loosen the Shackles, you know, because it's about Liverpool 8 and the race relations in Liverpool. But also, I think in terms of the canon, I mean, I encourage people, young people, to use the text to stimulate the debate. Often I remind young people that many of the texts that we read it was written by people like us who thought outside the box and dared to have a different concept and a different view of life. And so we need to encourage our young people to challenge what they read in textbooks and to have the confidence in order to do that. And so they will set the standard going forward, basically.
I recommend Andre Levy's The Long Song, which is about a revolution, and it, you know, it precisely speaks to this theme of resistance. But it's also really striking because when Andre Levy was asked about why she wrote a novel about slavery, she said something like that there is absolutely no shame in this heritage, that these slaves were resilient, they were fighters, they survived. And I thought that really struck me. And it's a novel that really is a testament to those kind of spirits, I think. And I think it's a great book. We teach it at the MA level.
Lovely. Yes, Danielle.
I'm sorry, I don't have French references because they have not so many authors, but I would say it's a bit easy, but I do believe in that because as a teenager, I used to actually read everything, read a lot. And I think the key is read everything and put it back into context, because you're going to see whether it's about whatever the topics, you're going to see reflected in the books, in the context of the author writing, the power struggle happening, whether there's no Black character in the story and you understand why and you discuss it. So I would say as a teenager, read as much as is possible and then debate and then confront what's missing, why can't you see yourself in the characters, and I think that's a very the best process when you think back about, when I think back all the books I used to read as a teenager and realized, you know, the distance between them and myself, and I could still feel and see myself in a universal way, but something was always lacking. And I think this is the best part of reading, and to read and then to debate about that.
Lovely, thank you. And a perfect point